All right. So my talk would be towards trustworthy AI in medical imaging. So towards means like we are in a direction to build trustworthy AI in medical imaging. So my talk would be, uh, in I can basically group my presentation into three broad topics. So in the first, I will start with very basics, give you a overview of medical imaging in general. I'm not going into the details, and then also like show you some of the applications for medical AI applications for medical imaging. And then we will identify some of the challenges. Definitely, there are several challenges which I won't be able to cover. So some of the challenges that we have identified in our lab, and then how we are tackling them, and what would be the future direction. Uh, so let's start with medical imaging and its necessity. So I think many of us already know what medical imaging is. If you are not working on it, I think you have definitely experienced or at some point of your life during the hospital or some checkups, right? Um, so basically, medical imaging is a techniques used to visualize the interior of the body, and it helps us, not us, I mean actually the clinicians or the experts, how organs and tissue function and look. In short, this allows a doctor to see what they cannot touch, you see, right? So without medical imaging, so we would not have been able to diagnose, you know, um, or basically, or with, early detection would have been almost impossible, or precision medicine we could not, I mean, that would have been out of reach. And if doctor had to rely only on the symptoms, then, either symptoms or they would have actually, it would have been necessary for them to go surgery. So medical imaging is pretty, very much essential in our healthcare system. Right. So in the today's healthcare, 90% of the data that comes from is are from medical images. So these are widely used for critical diagnosis and clinical decision making. So there are several types of multiple types of modalities that include digital radiography, computer tomography, magnetic resonance, and OCT, optical coherence tomography, and ultrasounds. So this each of the the modality imaging modalities have their own strength, and they are used for different purposes, right? So but I would not go into the details here now, and just wanted to give you an idea that, okay, there do exist wide ranges of medical imaging modalities. So, compared to the previous one that I mentioned, there is another kind of imaging which is also called, which is widely known as endoscopic imaging. So this is slightly different than the one I mentioned just before. Um, this endoscopic imaging, it consists of a tube, small tube, and endoscope, and then there is a camera on tip, which is called endoscope. So these are inserted inside our body, and then from our openings, right? So and then it captures the images. So these are mostly used the in colonoscopy, like to analyze or diagnose or screen the colons, right? And so this imaging is also useful for several purposes like diagnosis, screening, monitoring, or intervention. So this helps us to identify the cause of symptoms like abdominal pain or bleeding, difficulty swallowing, and so on. And these are also used for screening, like to detect early signs of disease such as polyps or cancerous growths, and for monitoring as well to track the progression of disease or the effectiveness of treatment, and so on. So I kind of a bit highlighted this imaging tool because techniques, because my research has been focused in analyzing these imaging techniques, although the methods are in generic in nature, but we have analyzed in this particular domain. So that's the reason I would like to introduce you what endoscopic imaging is first in first hand. Right. So there are several different kinds of imaging modalities, and as I mentioned, that also allows us to, see the interior of the body or the doctors to interior of the body without, opening our body or without surgery, and that has also been widely been used for early detection and screening and so many other purposes. But then, although um, there are healthcare professionals, they are trained for analyzing such images, but still there is a human factor, the error. Doesn't matter how trained you are, so there will be always be a certain percentage of error. And then see, like, I would like to motivate why and we might need AI to fill that gap here. So so here are some of the images, the snapshot, I basically took it from the newspaper. So you can see on the right hand side that is taken from BBC. So what it says is that repeated failures in reading scans costing lives, and also there are some scientific studies that have shown that adenoma, which is called benign non-cancerous tumor. So basically, this miss rate is as high as 6 to 27%. And so also there is in the human error on radiology report is also as high as 20 to 30%. Okay. And there is some kind of correlations between this adenoma detection rate and the patient's outcome. So basically, if we could increase 1% in adenoma detection rate, so that could actually decrease in cancer risk by 3%. Right. So the idea here, I mean, why I'm presenting these statistics here is that, okay, as a human, even the professionals, right? I mean, as an ordinary, like, I mean, we are not basically able to, analyze such images. We are not trained to do that. Even the healthcare professionals who are trained, they made certain error, right? So then basically the idea here is that if we can develop AI tools which can actually help to minimize that error, that would actually help to improve the patient's outcome. So AI as an assistive tool, could be used to reduce error rates and enhancing the detection. So it has shown a lot of promises to act as an assistive tool to identify subtle patterns, like detect anomalies that are difficult for the human eye to perceive consistently, and similarly quantify and characterize, that provides objective measurements and description of findings, and also like flagging suspicious areas. Um, so basically, where there is no it can basically direct the human's experts' attention to the region of interest. So basically, it can act as second pair of eyes. So, I mean, I don't think I need to mention it here and go into the details and motivate you also like to enough to say that, I don't think I need to provide examples to convince you that, AI has been widely been used and even in healthcare, right? So there is um, the application of AI in healthcare is growing. So it can be analyzing medical records or radiology scans, histology, slides, genomics, proteomics, or you name it, right? And these are used for several tasks like prediction, diagnosis, prognosis, survival, and treatment response, and so on and so. So uh, the thing is that, yes, so there are a lot of data. Medical data is also generating, right, with the advancement in medical imaging techniques, and the AI is also like there, and then the use of AI in healthcare is also growing. So now the question here is that you know are the AI or in general, like in terms AI or deep learning or machine learning model that we develop, are they really trustworthy? Okay. So the question mark is there, right? And then first of all, to basically derive such conclusion, we should know what is trustworthy AI means. Like, so according to European High Commission Expert Group on AI 2019, so I think this basically um, characteristics must be updated now, maybe this thing, but still this characteristics holds true for trustworthy AI, which is reliability, robustness, right? So the AI should be reliable and AI when we develop, so it should be able to protect the personal data of data crucial in medical AI, and the AI should be fair, meaning like it should be able to ensure equal treatment across the different groups. And also the AI algorithms that we develop should be able to explain, the basis of for decision making, right? So these are some of the characteristics of trustworthy AI. So to enhance the reliability or to protect the privacy and as well as in the explainability, our group is making some effort. And in the next slides, I'm going to share you some of our contributions that we have made so far. Right. So before jumping into our contributions, so I would also like to highlight some of the reason, or some of the challenges that could, you know, um, create the challenges some of the important challenges in building the trustworthy AI for healthcare. So some of them are data are heterogeneous, right? So for example, you can see here on the this top left side. So these are the endoscopic images collected in different centers. Okay, and you could see them, even from our general, the ordinary people eyes. I mean, they look different. I mean, in terms of lighting, or or like the illumination is definitely different, and maybe the devices they are using are different, and so on. That's one thing. It's very clear that data are heterogeneous. And another thing is also small scale data set size. So unlike computer vision or natural language processing, where we can get data from the internet, so but in general, medical imaging that comes from the hospitals, and they are actually decentralized because we can't share them freely. And also, like, they are in general, they are small in size, like they are in the order of few thousands, or nowadays, yes, there are benchmark with few hundred thousands. And also, like, missing modalities is also another problem, meaning like, you know the patients or may not go through the same process, diagnostic process everywhere. So maybe the clinic, the healthcare professionals follow certain set of diagnostic process in one region, maybe not be that may not be applicable in another part of the world. And noisy labels, because it's always difficult to annotate them. So there would be always a high chance of imperfect labels. And long tail distribution is due to like emerging and rare disease pattern, meaning like there can be new disease coming up. So the data that we get for such particular disease may not be that sufficient. And nor last but not least is privacy and ethical challenges, right? So some of the so one of the promising direction, one of the promising learning paradigm that is there now for enhancing the privacy protection is federated learning. So what does this federated learning means is it's a collaborative machine learning without direct sharing of the data. So imagine you have a number of different hospitals, and then they have their own data. So the idea here is that how it works is global model is initialized in a central server. Let's say it's in a cloud or somewhere there. And then each of the hospital, they train their own model on their data. And then basically these models will be shared to the cloud, not the data here. Okay. So meaning the models will be shared to the cloud. And then there will be some several algorithms being proposed for aggregation of the model parameters. And then these aggregated model will come back to, pushed back to clients again, and then retrain the model. So basically, this is an idea of this is a collaborative training machine learning method where we don't need to really share the data. So that is one of the promising learning paradigm which can actually help us to protect the patient's crucial data. Right. So fair average is one of the earliest work in federated learning. So this is a simple aggregation method. So what it does is, the model are trained locally, and then these model parameters are sent to the server, and these are aggregated, and then simple aggregation is there, and then this aggregated comes back to push back to the client, and then they are retrain it again, and then iteratively, pushed back, pushed to the pushed. I mean, will be pushed to the server and then pushed back to the client. So iteratively, the parameters are learned. So this kind of method, assumes that, each of the clients they have, the data is coming from same distribution, right? So it assumes like the heterogeneity across the data. The data heterogeneity in data across the client is actually not present, or they don't assume, basically. So in practice, actually, the data are very highly heterogeneous, right? So then there was another the work which is called framework proposed in 2020. So then this method was particularly designed for addressing data heterogeneity. So the idea here was that some model may basically come from different distributions, and then heterogeneous distribution to minimize that impact. So basically this regularization term is used, and that penalizes if some client is drifting away. Okay, so this kind of method actually could help, were actually useful for addressing the data heterogeneity problem in medical imaging. Okay, so we actually explored this method in one of our the clinical problem that we are trying to address. So one of the application, which is like optical coherence tomography, and then so you can see here the distribution of the data, right? So there is one case is IID, and another is non-IID. So basically, you can see that the distribution of the data across the different clients. Basically, we created this the environment, so basically we created such client that the data distribution across the client is a non-IAD. And then we evaluated these two methods and observed that this paid procs can work well, generalize better when there is the data heterogeneity is there. So this is something that we applied this method for one of the clinical use cases. Other than that, there are several challenges in federated learning. So this can be imbalanced data volumes or incomplete modalities, right? And now in my group, we are mostly focusing on training designing the novel federated learning algorithms, multimodal federated learning algorithms in the cases where data modality incomplete is there. So as I said, what is this multimodal federated learning, right, with missing modalities? So what are these missing modalities? As I also mentioned before, meaning like each of the clients may not have complete modalities. Some of them can have complete modalities. Let's say there is one client that Indiana University, that's the data set collected at Indiana University. It consists of both chest X-ray and radiology report. Sorry about that. Right. So okay, so how is it? So basically, yeah, so multimodal with missing modalities, right? So this is the data collected from Indiana University. Um, um, so it consists of both chest X-ray and radiology report, and even Beth Israel Medical Center also consists of both. Whereas like Stanford Hospital, it only consists of chest X-ray. So this is a scenario of missing modality. Okay, so one of the clients. So if we think of training of multimodal federated learning, then we would encounter a client which lacks complete modality. So the idea here is that so now how can we um, learn in a federated manner in an optimal way, right? So in that case, we recently presented one of our work, which is a multimodal federated learning by multimodal federated learning by augmentation by retrieval in clients. So the idea was here, so that you can see here, right? So there are multiple clients. So some of the clients are complete and some of them are not. So the idea here is we try to make use of the publicly available data set. Okay, so there are, as you know, right? So when we do the experiments, so there are some benchmarks available for scientific purpose. So then our idea was that since these data sets are there, and why not to, leverage them? So our idea was simple yet effective. So what we did here is cross-modal augmentation. The idea here is that, if there is a client with only one modality, then we basically project this the data into the feature space and then compare the cross-modal features and try to find the closest example from the publicly available data set. And then this closest example would actually be used to augment the missing modality. So this is the idea here. So as I said, so these are the images, and these are projected into the feature, and we find the nearest images. And also we did some kind of label refinement because these images were multi-label. We need to find the images with closest label too, right? And then once we find the nearest images, then we basically use its counterpart textual image to augment to uh, the let's say the query image or the original image from the client. So you can see it here. So if some clients have only image, then we augmented text from the publicly available data set, and the vice versa. And these are some of the experimental results. The fed average is the multimodal form of fed average, and then the cream apple is one of the state-of-the-art method in multimodal federated learning, and this is our method. And in a different setups like homogeneous as well as in the heterogeneous setup, right? You can see the partitions where image, text, and multimodal, right? So this zero means like it is the text is missing here. So basically the number shows the corresponding number of clients here. So basically we tested in a different combination of the clients. Either they are unimodal or multimodal, and then in the various setups. So basically our method consistently improves the compared contemporary methods. Okay, and here are some qualitative results. So what we kind of observed here is that for an image, so the augmentation across different training iterations were actually different. So meaning it also help us to enhance the privacy. Sometimes the question can be raised that, okay, so if we know the what kind of publicly available data set or the image is being augmented, maybe that can disclose the information of the patient. But the good thing is that, our model, the algorithm does not just rely on a specific data from the publicly available data set. Okay. Right. So that was about how we you leverage the publicly available data set for tackling the problem in multimodal federating learning with missing modalities. But the problem with that approach was, we may not find the publicly available data samples to fill the modality gap, right? So then, uh, so our recent work, what we proposed in our recent work is that, okay, instead of relying on publicly available data set, so let's basically rely on the leverage, I would say, like, maximize the utilization of the multimodal data that are present in the multimodal clients. As I said, I mean, there can be some of the clients with multimodal data, right? So then our idea here was, right, uh, to train a feature translation network, meaning like if there is a client with multimodal data, then definitely we train a model for downstream tasks, as well as we also train a model which is used to translate the network, I mean the feature from one modality to another modality. So like if there are image and text, then we also learn a feature translator network. Okay. So why, you might be asking, like, why we are relying on feature translation? Why not, like there are generative AI, right? So which can translate from one domain to another domain. So then why we are not doing that? So the idea is that, the network can be compact, one thing, like it's because the features will be low dimensional, and then we can still reconstruct it correctly, even with the low, the small number of parameters. Okay. So, and also like, in medical imaging, the data are high dimensional and reconstructing them would be incurred, it would incur error. So reconstructing them into high dimensional can be difficult. So instead we propose to translate them in a low dimension and then concatenate them into the bottleneck feature and then, train the model. So that was the idea here. So again, the setup is similar. Here, so multiple clients, different types of clients, and some clients with some imaging, some are with the text, and then the client with both the modality. We basically use those data to train our feature translator network as well. And then whichever are the missing and the clients with the missing modality, we basically, you know, reconstruct the feature here. So basically, if image is present in a client, then we feed it into the image feature extractor, get this feature, and then feed this feature into the feature translator, and then we concatenate the feature, the translated feature, along with the image feature, and then feed into the classifier. Okay. So this, I mean, then the experiments were also done into the same setup that I discussed before. And here are some of the experimental results. So there are not actually many work being done in this field. So we had to compare with some of the naive baselines, like what happens if you fill the missing modality features with zero fillings or uniform fillings, or this is the one of the closest work to ours, which is R2Gen, means like generative model that translate the missing modality, reconstruct the missing modality here, right? And this is our method. And again, we saw some improvement with a good margin compared to the existing baselines. And then we also did experiments in both homogeneous and heterogeneous setup. And so heterogeneous setup means like maybe I don't know whether I managed to, I mean, I mentioned it before or not. So heterogeneous setup means where the clients, some of the clients may have the data from different distribution. Okay. So in this case, homogeneous meaning like the data distribution across the clients is more or less similar. Okay. Right. So here are some results, like qualitative results. So feature imputation means that's our method. And then these are the other baselines. So you can see it here, right? The translated network actually exhibits some clusters of data. So basically it means like, the class information has also been preserved when we translate the features, which we actually expect. So rather than the random and other methods, they basically exhibit some uniform distribution. Yeah. Right. So that was about privacy preservation. And so that was one of the pillar of trustworthy AI. So another pillar is ensuring reliability. So how do you do that, right? So let me give you one example here. So you can see here on the right hand side. So this model is trained with, taking these are the X-ray images, right, for chest. And this is trained to classify one of the three classes, or, three class classification, or multi-level classification. So multi level classification problem, right? So then if this model trained on the chest X-ray is tested on the X-ray of knee joint or something else, or even, in any of other images. So then still it classifies, maps or classifies to one of the classes that we use to train the model. So basically, this is some kind of close set assumption, like, okay, so there are some fixed number of diseases or anomalies, and then basically we train the model in that closed set fashion, right? So, but in real world, it does not. It's not like that. Basically, we have long tail distribution of the diseases, as well as some new emerging diseases are there constantly, right? So then, how to make the AI algorithms reliable? So this is something like I would like to basically skip it here because I mentioned it before as well. So heterogeneous data, long tail problem, and closed world assumptions. These are the some of the things that makes medical AI unreliable. So then how are we addressing this problem here is that, um, we basically come up with a novel idea, I would say. So the idea here is that, so basically imagine that you have a healthy, I mean, the data, the model trained in the healthy GI images. And then how are you going to make that model actually be able to, flag any kind of abnormality? So not necessarily to identify which abnormality, but it should be able to identify that, okay, there is some problem, right? So then that basically would make the model responsible, meaning that, like there can be some of the cases which I haven't encountered, like the model hasn't encountered during the training. So then the model should be able to say, or, like be able to respond, that if the something comes out of the data that is not being used during the training, rather than like making an inference, so maybe should provide an opportunity to intervene or, reviewed by some specialist. So basically this diagram summarizes our idea. The patient may undergo endoscopy, right? And then, so then this is basically, in general, like if you use standard AI classification algorithms, and then basically these are trained, this data are used to train some, some classification as a classification problem. And then you just feed it, and then it makes one of the class, maps to one of the classes, right? So instead of that, what we do here is that we basically first, train uh, estimate if the examples are coming from the similar distribution or the same distribution the model was trained on or not. If that is belongs to different distribution, or then basically it goes to, the model will not be confident enough to make an inference. So rather than that, making inference, it goes to a specialist, and it will it will be reviewed by the specialist. Okay. If not, then it will undergo the normal procedure. Okay. So for that, uh, so that was our overall idea, to make AI more responsible. So then for that, what we proposed is NCDD, which is feature-based on-scene and abnormality detection score, which NCDD means nearest centroid distance deficit. So what we did here is that we train a classification network, so your standard classification network, right, on the healthy tissues, meaning like these are ID example, let's say, right? So then the features, so during inference time or test time, so what we do here is that we feed this image through this network, extract the features, and then these features will be compared to the centroids of the known classes. Okay. And then if the data comes from the same distribution, similar distribution to that of the training data set, then it will basically will be closer to one of the known classes. Okay. Whereas OOD actually failed to exhibit that, because OOD example or the on-scene examples are not optimal. The model is not optimal to the OOD examples. And then this score actually helps us to identify this ID example or the data that is being used, during the training from the on-scene data set. And then if we identify them as OOD or on-scene data, then the model will not make any inference on this kind of data, right? Whereas if they belong to the ID or the in-domain data, then we make the inference. So there are some of the experimental results compared with some contemporary work, and this is what we see here. And yeah, so this NCDD performs competitively or surpasses the existing methods. And here is a demo I would like to show you. So how does it work? Here is, so the frames are coming in, right? And the model will, if it's, in-domain data, then basically it makes the prediction or the inference. But if it identifies some, out of distribution data, then instead of making inference, it flags and then gives opportunities to be reviewed by the experts. Okay, that was about like how to make AI algorithm reliable in medical setting. So then we are further working in a similar direction, but we would also like to add the feature of explaining the basis on which the model is making a decision for detecting out of distribution detection problem in general. Meaning like we'd like to investigate or develop the method that can give us a basis on which it is making a decision. Okay, so for that, we explored neural level relevance, and this paper is presented MICAI this year. So what is this neural level relevance is basically um, this is the score. I mean, that is quantified as contribution of a neuron that is making to the next layer's neuron. So that's called neuron level relevance here. So this is the architecture, and this is the mirror image of architecture. So this RJ basically, computes, estimates how much this neuron is making contribution to fire, the next layer neurons. Okay, so we estimated those neuron level relevance and used as a feature, and then you employ the score similar to that we um, use for ANSI-DD, the previous paper, and then basically these features, this neuron level scores were useful to detect ID example from OOD example, but then it also became also added another feature of capability of describing or giving the explanation on the basis it made decision. So let's look at here some of the qualitative examples. So here we can visualize this neural level relevance to explain our OOD detection framework. So this for that we use concept relevance propagation. To compare ID and OOD samples. Okay, so you can see it here, pylorus versus polyp. Okay, so what is so interesting about these two visualization is that pylorus and polyp, they basically, okay, there is perturbation for sure, there is hall, but in general, like if you look into the anatomy, somehow they are circular in nature, in shape. So then we wanted to see like how does the network behave if we feed these images into the network, right? So then what we observed here is that since the model was trained on ID example, right, the in-domain example, so what we observed is that some of the challenges were prominent for ID examples, okay, whereas for OOD example, all of the channels, so basically were more or less with similar intensity. Okay, so this has been we have summarized this thing into this diagram as well. So if you see it here, this ID is the red line, so it shows the ID examples, right? So here are some channels, so certain subset of channels exhibit the relevancy score is pretty high, meaning like with high intensity activations. Well, whereas for the OD example, basically this is diffused, right? So similarly, we can see here Z line and then the ulcerative colitis. The maps are prominent for right example, whereas for OOD, this is not that visible. So basically, it gives you some kind of map or the basis, on what basis actually the model is making a decision. Right. So this is some schematic diagram to showing how we generate the map. So if the model predicted pylorus, then we compute this relevancy score, propagate back, and then fish into the conditional heat map and generate this conditional heat map. And this gives us an idea that, the belonging into a class, what are the different in the distribution of different global relevancy score for different, um, let's say, um, landmarks, I would say, like the clinical, I mean the anatomical landmarks here. Okay, right. So that's do we still have time or
Yes, I guess, yeah.
okay? So I will conclude, okay, in a 5 to 5 minutes or so.
Excellent. Yeah.
Right. So basically now that was about OD detection, and then we also discussed about some of the explainability basis for detecting the out of distribution detection and making in general, aiming to make the AI algorithms reliable, right? So another work that we have recently done and then presented in MICAI this year is hallucination over multimodal benchmark for again GI imaging with vision language model. So as we know, vision language model are widely being used in several problems, including applications, including medical imaging, right? Then they do generate, the response as if like generated by human, but in general, the BLM tends to, they basically tends to hallucinate, meaning hallucinate. What does this hallucination mean? Like it's a misinterpretation of medical images and diagnosis error and inaccurate anatomical or pathological description. So as you can see on the right hand side, so there are certain questions. So these are the questions designed by the experts, and we took it from Cavasier 2 data set. So this is a data set created by one of the partner institute of NORA, I guess. Yeah, NORA. I know. I mean, so basically, so that was created by them, and it has been widely been used in the research. So what we did here is that we took the questions designed there, and these questions were fed to vision language model, right? And then wanted to see the output. Okay, so then we analyze the output here. So if we see this, the BLM output, this red color text means like these are the hallucinated one, meaning it generated the response, but it makes a lot of mistakes there. Okay. And then what we realized here is that, okay, there is no such benchmark to, analyze the hallucination or to quantify the hallucination. Then basically, um, um, we proposed, we kind of came up with an idea to create a benchmark for hallucination detection. Okay. So this is the pipeline while we create the data set, meaning the text, the response from BLM, and then hallucinated response from the BLM, um, and the counterpart, the ground truth response. So so what we did here is then we took the Cavashir B2 images. These images were fed into GPT-4 Omni, uh, with the prompt text. Okay, so the text were the questions. These were the questions, right? So they are the questions actually designed by the experts, and then this generates the response, right? And these responses were analyzed by the experts, and then they identify where the VLM GPT-4 hallucinated. For example, the red color text you can see here is the hallucinated text, and the expert basically corrected them. So then we also created the counterpart ground truth description. Okay, so this is the hallucinated text, and this is the corrected text, means the counterpart ground truth text. And now then later on, also we evaluated, the hallucination by the vision language model, and also manually we manual validations and verified diagnostic question answering. So then to summarize, our contribution here is this is the multimodal. We basically created this textual counterpart for the Cavashir, and uh, and then we also did some kind of comprehensive evaluation. And the third one is hallucination and over fine tuning. This is the new novel technique that we proposed to leverage the hallucinated text and its counterpart text present while training the model. Okay, so some of the key statistics here are okay. So far we have generated such text for 1800 images only, because it's quite expensive to annotate such data because both cost and time. So then out of this 1800 images, what we observed here is that 1800, 32 of the cases were the cases where the model completely hallucinated. Okay. And then 1200 have mixed response, meaning like some of the facts were correct and some of them were not correct. And there were only one third of them, 552 cases where vision language model actually made the complete correct managed to generate the correct diagnostic report, right? And then there are also like how does this the BLM response accuracy of BLM response spreads across the different aspects. The we can see that the accuracy is highest in position, location, and medical findings, and it made mistakes mostly on anatomical classes. Okay, so if you would like to get the data and then the annotation tool, then you can scan this QR code and get them from our GitHub repository. So that was about the data set in general, and then another contribution that we also made is that okay, the data is there, then how to leverage the benefit the maximum out of the annotation that we have, right? So then we proposed a novel idea of fine tuning. So in standard fine tuning, in general, what we do is that the image is there and its counterpart ground truth description is there. So then you train the model to generate the ground truth responses, right? So here what we did is that image and then the GPT generated response were feed into it, and then we basically guide vision language model to identify where this text contains the hallucinated text, and then also further we in the next step, basically we guide BLM to correct the responses. So we called it hallucination over fine tuning, and this fine tuning method actually improves the performance over the standard fine tuning technique. So we have compared across different some of the most widely being used or popular vision language models, and then these are the scores, and we compared on different um, uh, metrics like this blue score or meteor, as well as we propose this R similarity in QAS. These are the two metrics that were used here. So which actually, this basically RSIM compares the semantic similarity between the response, ground truth response, and then the generated response. And this QAS is basically we basically for the given response, we basically objectively generated the question answering response from those text response and compare and calculate the accuracy. So this is the leaderboard, and that actually concludes my presentation here. And so to conclude, right, so AI has it's showing a lot of promises to revolutionize healthcare, particularly by enhancing accessibility and efficiency. But then data complexity is a challenge, right? So AI deployment is constrained by heterogeneity and multimodality of real-world patient data, and also ethical imperatives are there. So successful adoption of AI is dependent on developing robust methods for patient data protection and ensuring responsible AI practices. So in the future direction, there should be, I mean, the future direction would be, I mean, like, developing novel AI architecture, which can seamlessly handle heterogeneous multimodal data, right? And then I think we should have a focus in strengthening the data privacy using federated learning and differential privacy. And also, we should foster human AI collaboration. So the designing transparent and explainable AI support tool for clinician would be should be prioritized in the future, and definitely we should also establish the governance um, for development and implementation of ethical guidelines and regularity, ensuring safe, fair, and accountable AI. So this concludes my presentation here, and thank you so much for your attention. And now I'm happy to take the questions.
Thank you so much for the insightful presentation. And if you have any question, please go on and write in the chat. But while we are waiting for the question to come, I can start with my question from my own side. So I'm wondering when you're moving from research prototypes to real clinical situation, what are the hardest challenge and how you mitigate that? I understood that out of distribution cases is one of the challenges, and you may direct them to one more step for clinicians checking. But what are the other challenges when you are applying federated learning, and how you mitigate that?
Okay, that's a very important question. So let me rephrase it, and then if I, would like to ensure that I understand, understood everything here. Meaning, so basically, your first question was that what are the challenges to translate AI algorithms into the real world, right?
Yes.
So I think challenges are, I mean, because healthcare is a very sensitive area. I mean, every area are sensitive when we deploy AI or automation, right? So then definitely the healthcare is even more sensitive. So in that case, we definitely need to have our algorithm again, right? The generalization across different groups. Doesn't matter like whether I mean, generalization across the different ethnicity and then different backgrounds, that's one thing. And then responsible AI is another thing, like, and how to make algorithm responsible so that, algorithm will not just make onshore or prediction or, sometimes or often becomes uh, basically overconfident, right? So that's another case. And explainability is also, I think, this is the main challenges because until and unless we can't explain on the basis, on which like algorithm is making um, the prediction, then how would even the people or the patient would how they would accept it or even the clinicians, who basically are going to use it. So they also need to have a clear idea. So these are some of the cases. On top of it, definitely privacy, which is very much crucial, right? So I think these all come as a bundle of challenges, and we have to tackle them and ensure every aspects are, addressed and before the deployment. So
Yes.
I hope, did I answer your question here? And
Yes,
then
yes, yes,
federated,
of course.
right? So you had some question, right? So you had some question about federated learning. So we are still developing the algorithm. So we haven't tried it on the clinical practice,
Okay.
but we would like to at some point of time. Yes.
Nice. We have one more question in the chat. I think we can get enough time to go through that one. What mechanisms are in place to ensure that AI systems maintain reliability over time as medical imaging data distribution shift? What mechanisms should be there? Yeah.
Right. So what mechanisms should be there to make AI responsible, right? So our approach is, if I have to answer from the approaches that we are taking here, is that, you know, the model should be able to identify the data, in-domain data, meaning like the what kind of data was used during the training, and if it encounters something else, which is completely different than the data that was being trained during training, then rather than making inference, so maybe the models would be behave or act responsibly, not making the inference, maybe providing the opportunity to collaborate with human here. Okay, so that kind of the AI human collaboration could actually can enhance the can make AI more responsible here.